Hey everybody out in YouTube land, my name is Mike and I love guitars. With 2022 coming to a close, I decided it was time to do a guitar collection video. These are some of my favorite videos to watch from other YouTubers, and I thought it'd be fun to do one of my own, so let's do this. I've been collecting guitars for a very long time, and I've owned dozens of guitars in my life. And while I've made a couple of videos already talking about specific guitars, I thought it'd be fun to make a video showing the entire collection. We'll start with the guitar that I've owned the longest, my 1979 Gibson Les Paul Standard in natural finish. I bought this guitar when I graduated high school back in 1994, and it's my all-time favorite guitar. Over the nearly 30 years that I've owned it, I've modded this guitar quite a bit. It already had a DiMarzio X2N Plus in the bridge when I bought it, and I added a DiMarzio Deactivator X in the neck and Grover tuners. I also removed the pick guard, toggle switch poker chip, and the finish from the back of the neck. If you want to know more about this guitar, feel free to check out the full video I made about it a while back. Next up is my current number 2 guitar. It's a 2020 Gibson Les Paul Traditional Pro 5 with a blueberry burst finish. It's completely stock except for doing my usual of removing the pickguard and toggle switch poker chip. Between the dip switches inside the control cavity and the push-pull pots on all 4 knobs, this guitar is capable of a fairly wide range of tones. Admittedly, I really don't use all of those tones, but that's not really why I bought this guitar. I bought it because I think Blueberry Burst is gorgeous, and that was reason enough for me to add another Les Paul to the collection. This is actually the newest guitar in my collection. It's a 2022 Gibson Les Paul Adam Jones Silverburst Standard. I just recently got this guitar and I absolutely love it. I've been wanting a Silverburst Les Paul since I first learned about them, thanks to Adam Jones, in the 90s. I ordered mine earlier this year, and after waiting about 6 months, it finally came in a few weeks ago. It's completely stock and will probably stay that way. It plays and sounds amazing, so it will definitely be featured in a full video very soon. Next up is my 2003 Gibson Les Paul Special. I found this near mint special in a pawn shop in early 2020 for a reasonable price. Unlike most specials that have wraparound bridges, this one has a separate bridge and tailpiece. From what I can tell, it appears to be a Guitar Center exclusive. It also appears to be completely stock, has the fattest neck of all my Les Pauls, and with the installed P90s, sounds more like a Strat than my Strats. This guitar is also fairly new to the collection. It's a 2011 Gibson Les Paul Studio Faded, and some of you might remember this guitar as the focus of a recent video of mine. I found it in a pawn shop and it was absolutely covered in grime. It was by far the most disgustingly filthy guitar I've ever seen, but with a little work it cleaned up very nicely. It also appears to be completely stock and plays and sounds great. I did originally remove the pickguard and poker chip like pretty much all my other Les Pauls, but I think this one's going to be going up for sale soon, so I went ahead and put them back on. I would like to keep it, but it's going to help cover the cost of the new Adam Jones Standard. The final guitar in the Les Paul collection isn't technically a Les Paul, but come on, it's a Les Paul. It's my 2014 Gibson LPJ that I found in a pawn shop a few Christmases ago. I got it for a smoking deal at $300 and change. It's had the bridge pickup changed to a Burstbucker Pro, the satin bridge and tailpiece replaced with chrome parts from a Les Paul Standard, and the ugly LPJ truss rod cover replaced with a blank. All of those upgrades were documented in a video last year. Even though it's my cheapest Gibson, it's also my favorite guitar for just sitting around the house noodling. Moving away from Gibsons for a bit, up next is probably the most flat-out metal guitar I own. It's a 2000 Ibanez RG550. Like so many other guitars in my collection, I found it in a pawn shop for about $250, and I normally play it when I'm working on my 80s metal chops. I'm really not a fan of floating tremolos, and this one is no different. However, this guitar is going to be the focus of an upcoming experiment, so be sure to check back soon to see what kind of craziness I get up to with it. This guitar is one I bought earlier this year. It's a 2015 Schecter Demon 7 and is the first 7-string I ever bought. I've always wanted one just for fun, and it kind of ended up being an impulse buy. This is also a guitar that I featured in a previous video, so check out that video if you want to know more about it. Even though it's a pretty cheap guitar, I'm thinking about putting some nice pickups in it like a set of Fishmans. I don't play a lot of super down-tuned metal, so it doesn't get played too much, but it's a fun guitar and I plan on keeping it around. Up next is another Schecter that a friend of mine gave me early last year. It's a 2019 C6 Plus that he bought when he decided to take up a hobby in the early days of the 2020 lockdowns. He only picked it up a few times before it ended up sitting in a corner for a year, and he finally decided that he was just never going to play and gave it to me. It's a pretty basic lower end Schecter, and I keep it around as a possible guitar for my son when he gets old enough for a full-size guitar. Circling back to finish up my Gibson collection, this is my 2004 Gibson Explorer Standard. This guitar was my number 2 for several years and briefly my number 1 when the frets on my 79 Les Paul Standard were so worn that it became near unplayable. Like my 79 Standard, my Explorer has a DiMarzio X2N installed in the bridge because those are the most awesome passive pickups ever and I love them. I also replaced the stock pickup rings and toggle switch tip with chrome and black plastic respectively. The original pieces were cream colored, and with the black of the guitar and the white of the pickguard, the cream pieces just triggered my OCD too much. Despite how pointy it is, this guitar is very comfortable to play and it sounds awesome. Next up is my 2004 Gibson SG Faded. It's yet another pawn shop guitar, and before I picked up the LPJ, it was my favorite hanging around the house guitar. It's got a fat neck and it plays really smoothly. It also has a mid-range growl that complements the deep fat tone of a Les Paul very nicely. It doesn't get played as much as it used to, but since I learned how to play guitar on an SG, I'll always want to keep this one around for nostalgic reasons. The last Gibson in my collection is, hands down, the coolest guitar that I own. This is my dad's 1966 Gibson L5 Custom. I've posted a couple of pictures of it online before, and I always have at least a couple of people tell me that it's not an L5, that it's a Birdland or something else. I want to take a second to say flat out that this is an L5. My dad ordered it directly from Gibson himself with several custom options, and it's 100% unmodified. He ordered it with nickel hardware instead of gold and Grover tuners. This guitar is by far the easiest playing guitar I have ever had. It almost plays itself and it sounds absolutely amazing. I inherited it when we lost my dad in 2020, and my son will inherit it from me when I'm gone. This next guitar is one that you may have seen a couple of times in recent videos. This is my 1997 PV Wolfgang Standard that I got at the beginning of the year. It appears to be completely stock, and I got it at a decent price at a local pawn shop. As I've said before, I'm really just not a floating bridge kind of guy, but this guitar was just too cool to pass up. It's not perfect. It has a flaw in the finish where there are a lot of tiny air bubbles in the clear coat. I took it to a luthier and he said he's pretty sure it's the original factory finish and not a refinish. Maybe I'll have the finish repaired one day, but maybe not. It's worth slightly more with the original finish, flaws and all. Now let's take a look at a couple of Fenders. This first Strat was featured in a previous video of mine and was my dad's Strat. It's a 2006 American Standard Strat, completely stock, and it plays and sounds great. This was a guitar that my mom and I got together and bought for my dad a number of years ago. He always wanted a Strat, but was just the type of man who never spent money on himself. I went to Guitar Center and picked out a Strat that was as close to what Buddy Holly used to play as I could find, and we surprised him with it at our family Christmas gathering. It's an awesome guitar, and I intend to pass it along to my son when it's time. My only other Fender is this 2003 Highway 1 Strat that I found in, wait for it, a pawn shop. The Highway 1 Strats have a finish similar to Gibson Faded model guitars and came with mini humbucker pickups in the bridge position. Been thinking about some mods for this one for a while, but haven't really decided on anything yet. It plays great and has a nice tone for recording somewhere between my dad's Strat and my Les Pauls. Finally, we come to the last guitar in my electric collection. Honestly, I have no idea what this thing is. I came across it in a pawn shop over 20 years ago for about $100. It appears to be either a home build or kit guitar and was originally a pink sparkle color. I bought it at a time when I hilariously thought I was going to get into guitar building and repair without having any tools, training, or even any real knowledge about guitar building at the time. Can you tell? I haven't touched it in years, but it does have a nice Bill Lawrence L500 pickup in it that I'll put into a nicer guitar one of these days. I'm not a huge acoustic guitar guy, but I do have a few to look at. This first acoustic is a 2004 Ibanez AEF 30, and it's not a high-end acoustic or anything, but it does mean a lot to me. A lot of years ago, my wife and my mother-in-law got together and bought it for me for Christmas. It's not the best sounding acoustic I've ever heard, but it's really easy to play for an acoustic. Even if I get a high-end Martin or Taylor one day, I'm still going to keep this one forever due to the nostalgia tied to it. Next up is my 1979 Guild D35. This guitar sounds amazing, but it is a beast to play. I need to take it to a luthier to have some work done, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. It's been in my family since 1979, except for a brief period when it got away. During that time, the bridge broke loose from the body, and the guy who had it then just glued it back on himself with Elmer's wood glue. He never got the bridge flush to the body though, and now the action is just brutal. I really hope to get it fixed properly sometime in 2023. This guitar is a 1990 Ovation Model 1121 that I originally bought in my hometown back in the late 90s. When I decided to move to Austin at the end of 1999, my dad offered to buy it from me to help me out with a little extra cash. He already had a Gibson B25 acoustic and certainly didn't need an entry-level Ovation, but he wanted to help me out. He always kept it and took really good care of it. Now that he's gone, I have it again, and like my dad, I'll always keep it and take good care of it. This last acoustic in my collection has a story behind it, but I won't bother you with the details today. It's a Keith Urban acoustic and was my dad's final guitar purchase. There's nothing particularly special about it beyond the fact that it was my dad's. I really don't play it, but once my son is old enough for full-sized acoustic guitars, it'll be his. Did I say that last guitar was the last acoustic in my collection? Well, that isn't completely true. One of my oldest friends gave this to me a while back. It's a cheapo Hohner acoustic that he found on the side of the road with a broken neck joint. He put a screw in the joint and an LED light inside the body, and then he drilled holes in the body to make a pretty cool wall hanger. It was in his daughter's room for a few years before she decided she didn't want it anymore, and then he gave it to me. I haven't hung it yet since we're renting here, but in our next place it's definitely going on a wall. Getting close to the end here, we'll shift to 4 strings. I have 2 basses in my current collection, and this first bass was featured in my last video and is a 2002 Indonesian Squier P bass. It's been upgraded with made in Mexico tuners, a Fender USA high mass bridge, and DiMarzio pickups and electronics. It's a typical import P bass and does exactly what I need it to. Up next is my 2009 LTD B104. I bought it from a coworker for $100 years ago. Then a couple of years later, I sold it to a different coworker for $100. Then a few years after that, I bought it back from that coworker for $100. It's currently strung with the lowest 4 strings of a 5-string set, so I can use it along with my Schecter 7-string. It's a decent, if very cheap bass. Here we are at the end of the list. This last guitar actually belongs to my sister now, but I'm including it in this video because it's currently at my house. Think of it as a bonus guitar or maybe as an honorable mention. It's a Gibson B25 acoustic, and I'm honestly not sure of the year. I knew it was a Norland era Gibson because of the volute on the back of the headstock, but that's really all I knew. I emailed Gibson customer support and they said it was made in the early to mid 70s, but since serial numbers were regularly reused in that period, they couldn't be more specific. I have it because it needed some serious work and my sister asked me to take it to a luthier for the repairs. It's back in great working shape now and I'm just holding it until I can get it back to her. And that's it, guys. That's all of my guitars. For now. Full disclosure, there are still several other stringed instruments in this house, including a violin, a stand-up bass, and a couple of 3/4 scale guitars in my son's room, but I think this video is probably already long enough as it is. What can I say? We're a musical family and we live in a musical household. I hope you enjoyed the video and listening to me ramble on about the ridiculous number of guitars I own. Feel free to tell me about your collections in the comments below. I'm going to go play some of these things now and annoy my neighbors. Ha! Finish another one. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you liked it. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.